Okay, so while we prepare the next session, we've got everything here, preparing here the computer and everything. I wanted we could just present this session on the what or on the who, and of course we will go through the what. But I think that the who is really important. We've got on stage, and I'll introduce him once he's got everything ready, to Yuval Dvir. He's actually here is venture builder, but he's a former senior director, global product partnerships, SaaS and AI at Google. So he's been for 12 years touching, moving, understanding everything connected to DeepMind, Gemini recently, and so on, so on, so on. And he previously was at Sky, Microsoft, and I've got lots of things noted down here, but since we were talking some minutes before, I could just bring so many things, but I prefer that you do it. So I leave you with Yuval. He will just bring us the truth about AI and which are the real challenges from Silicon Valley to Barcelona. Thank you, Yuval.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. This is a beautiful venue. Thanks for having me. So I decided to name this presentation the Vibe Economy because I see it as a natural progression from vibe coding, vibe designing, and the fact that AI is starting to take a larger share of what we do in a company, and actually the entire company, and as a result, the economy. So let's start us off. The topic today, obviously, it's all going to be about AI. But specifically, I wanted to baseline everyone initially on the AI continuum. So where we are on this path, where are we going, what is this race about, and what are the intentions and motivations of those leading that race? And then we're going to talk a little bit about the AI market, which is connected to this, of course. And then going into the topic of this session, which is the abstraction layer, and why it's a fundamental principle of technology as a whole, and actually of our human brain as well, and how does it play out, and try to trajectory where this is going for all of us. And then we're going to go back to today. What can we do today and now in order to get on that bandwagon of AI and leverage it? And that's what we're going to talk about: data, business, and culture. So if we think about AI, AI started pretty much as an inspiration from the brain. The brain has the biological neural network, and we've taken them and created these artificial neural networks. But the big change happened in a research paper by Google, Attention is All You Need, in 2017, where it actually moved from recurring neural networks into transformers. That's the T in ChatGPT. And that is the architecture that underlines all of the LLMs, the large language models that we use today. So we moved from narrow AI, and now we're moving into a generative AI, so creating and generating. We're then moving to agentic AI, which is automation, generation, and orchestration. And then we're moving into the holy grail of AI, which is artificial general intelligence, what people call human-level intelligence. But actually, when they say human-level intelligence, that's not really the case, because what we're talking over here is the smartest human in any domain. So the best mathematician, the best physicians on everything. So we're already talking about a superhuman, not just a regular human-level intelligence. But many people believe that the real holy grail is superintelligence. And that is intelligence far superior of human intelligence that we cannot even comprehend. But as we went on this path towards AGI, there's been a disruption. And that disruption was LLMs. So on the one hand, LLM really progressed and expedited AI because that's what we're talking about. But to a certain degree, according to some people, we've skewed too much and focused on language, words, and statistics, and forgot the path towards AGI. And that started pretty much 3 years ago when ChatGPT launched from Sam Altman. Now, LLM have been significant, right? Both personal and professionally, and we all used it. But what you see here on the left is pretty much the layers for LLMs. You've got the power and data, you've got the AI stack of the chips and hardware, and that's why you have NVIDIA and others being successful. You've got the infrastructure, predominantly the cloud, and then you've got the frontier models like Gemini, like Claude and others, and then the application layer. And that requires a lot of energy in order to scale. So you've got companies like Google and Microsoft that are actually building nuclear power plants to get the energy. And these data centers are becoming almost a strategic asset and resource for this company. So much so that now the biggest hit at Silicon Valley is creating data centers at space. And in a way, it makes sense, because at space, you've got the abundant energy of the sun, which is much more powerful than what we get here on Earth. You've got cooling, because you can go to the dark side in a way and get the cooling, because it's almost absolute zero. And in terms of communication, we anyway get communication via lasers, via fiber optics. But laser travels much faster in a vacuum than it does through an optic line. So in a way, everything makes sense, and that's where we're heading to. But now there are different voices. One of these voices is Yann LeCun, who used to be the head of AI for Meta until recently he resigned. He was there for 13 years, and he believes that LLMs are not a bubble in terms of the value or investment. He believes that they're a bubble in terms that they alone will help us reach AGI. He mentions, and he's right, that they're still contextually blind, even though that's improving. They're emotionally deaf, they don't understand the mental state of the user, and they're physically lost. They have no spatial intelligence whatsoever. So something is missing, and the belief is that these AI agents need to learn more than just words. That sentiment has been echoed by several industry veterans. One of them is Dr. Fei-Fei Li, considered the godmother of AI, who's recently started a company called World Labs, and she's creating large world models, teaching AI spatial intelligence and experiencing the same level of experience that we humans do through our own lived physical experience. Then you've got Jack Hidary, the CEO of Sandbox AQ, spin-off out of Alphabet, and he's focusing on large quantitative models. And I'll show a quick example of that in the end, and why quantitative is actually the governing rules of the universe, and why we should focus on that as opposed to a human construct, which is words. And lastly, we have Ilya. He was the co-founder of OpenAI, and he believes that the last 3 to 5 years, the focus was very much on scaling, and we need to get back to the age of discovery to find what the real next thing is all about. So the way to illustrate that, I thought would be nice, is through a quick video. Let's see if it works, from Back to the Future.
In the past, the timeline skewed into this tangent, creating an alternate 1985. Alternate to you, me, and Einstein, but reality for everyone else.
So now you know I grew up in the 80s. So obviously we haven't invented the time machine quite yet, although with the advancement of quantum we may get there. But if you take the analogy, we started with AI with a path towards AGI. But LLM has been so successful that it skewed completely our focus. So much so that we're now on a completely different path, potentially. And that's why you hear more voices in the industry saying we need to get back on the path of AGI. And this is Jeff Hinton. He used to be at Google, considered, again, one of the godfathers of AI. And his response is that intelligence is multimodal. But it's not multimodal in terms of the technology term. It's not about the files of image, video, or text. It's multimodal because it's complicated. We're talking analytical, artificial, emotional, spatial intelligence. And the only device that we know in the known universe that is that smart is the human brain. So we need to get back to what inspired us to go on this journey to begin with, and that take lessons from the human mind. So those are the two opposing debates that are happening right now in the Valley. On the one hand, there's the Google approach, and Claude to a certain degree, brute force, more data centers, more chips, more compute, more energy, in order to reach that level of trillions of tokens and parameters that we can get that level of intelligence. Or there are those that believe we need a new architecture. We need to find a different way in order to solve artificial general intelligence. And there are good reasons for both. On the one hand, the way the human brain works is we do have trillions of parameters in terms of the neurons and the synapses in order to make any single decisions. But on the other hand, the differences between those different algorithms are not that significant, and we're not sure that scaling alone would allow us to reach that level. Let's quickly talk about the AI market and understand what's happening. The way I thought the best way to illustrate it is this. You've got the magnificent 7 stocks and companies, and they are racing ahead towards AGI. And the rest of us, the rest of the market, is trying to catch up, figure out what is the technology that they're doing, and what can we do with it. Now, some of you may ask, where's Anthropic over here, or where's OpenAI? My answer to that is they're actually represented within those 7 companies. And the way they are represented is because something like the circular funding and the strategic connections that is happening between those 7 companies. They're all invest in one another. There's different board directorships within them. And as such, it causes 2 main problems. The first problem to the market is we don't know when value is actually being created or it's moving hands between one of those companies to the other. And second, the whole idea is to democratize AI. And it feels like if this is the way things are going, it's going to remain within that exclusive club of 7, and the rest of us would get the crumbs. So that's a concern that more people are raising as well. Now you may ask, why is this so obsession of this race? Why do we really want to get to AGI as soon as possible? And the answer to that, and this is something that everybody should be aware of, is something that's called rapid recursive self-improvement. Some people call it the fast or hard takeoff. What this basically means is as these algorithms get smarter and smarter and we reach AGI, then the path towards SGI, which is super intelligence, would be much faster. So whatever gap you had before is going to evaporate and no one is able to catch up. Demis Hassabis of DeepMind calls it as well. Let's hear him talk.
That's sometimes called the hard takeoff scenario where, the idea there is that these AGI systems, they're able to self-improve, maybe code themselves, future versions of themselves, that maybe they're extremely fast at doing that. So what would be a slight lead, let's say, a few days, could suddenly become a chasm.
And that's the reason why it's not only within companies, it's also a geopolitical issue as well, predominantly between the US and China. Some people call it the Manhattan Project 2.0 because it's so significant. And again, I can't stress this enough, because if you look at history, if we look at evolution as well, whoever got more intelligence reigns supreme. And there's one thing that Jeff Hinton mentions, which is a concern as well, that there are very few examples where a more intelligent thing is being controlled by a less intelligent thing. So what happens when we lose control and we've created something more intelligent than us? And that's why the intelligence revolution is so significant, and that's why many people also considered it to be the last human invention. So let's get back now to the core topic that I wanted to talk about today, and that's abstraction. As I mentioned, abstraction is a core principle of technology. It's simplifying all the complexity and shielding us from that so we can just work with whatever we want based on our goals and intent. We have the technology stack, but we also have the neurocortical stack, because the way our brain operates as well, we have the conscious mind, which is in a way a smaller part of it, but most of the processing and the power and the complexity happens in our subconscious mind, which we don't have access to. And that's the abstraction level, which is also, in a way, you could call it an evolution term as well. Let's start with the basics. Let's look at text abstraction and take the cloud example. So initially where we were is that any company, whatever the business you're in, you had to have a data center, the servers, and you need to maintain them. You needed to have DevOps, whether you're food and beverage or anything else. You didn't have to be technical, but you had to hold it. And then we moved into cloud, initially virtual machines. We could offload some of that work to other companies that specialized in cloud computing. And now we're moving towards an area where most of the work is being done with hyperscaler cloud, and you are allowed to focus on really what you do best, which is advantageous to a lot of companies. But let's look what the future might potentially look like. So currently we have software, platform, and infrastructure as a service being part of the cloud stack. But we see already AI taking over code, taking over design, and taking over other areas as well. So AI is slowly taking more control of the software stack or the technical stack. We're seeing that also in acquisitions as well, as one of the biggest issues of acquisition is to do the integration on the back end. There are now agents that are helping doing that, and that's a massive headache being taken away. So ultimately, the way that we're going is AI, which is talking the language of technology, is going to potentially take the entire stack. IaaS, PaaS, and software as a service, which is a challenge because today, a lot of applications, software as a service, are touching the end customers. But what happens if AI swallows that in terms of the abstraction level? That means their business model change. From 50% margins, you'll have to become a back-end database and a 30% margin or 20. So there's a lot of changes happening, and we'll see how we get along. But it doesn't stop with the technology stack. Let's look at how organizations work, simplified. So we have the executive layer, we have an operational and technical layer. That's pretty much the organizational stack. Where we might be going is AI is proven to take over the technical stack, and with all our AI agents, it may take also on the operational stack, meaning that the only stack that will be left to the sole use of humans would be the executive stack, the strategy, the decision, the financings. But even that can be taken over, and I'll give you sort of two examples of it. First of all, the AI is egoless, emotionless, and tireless. It doesn't have the same emotional decision-making as humans do. And just recently, Sergey Brin, after coming back to Google and helping with Gemini, mentions that he used AI to decide who to promote, taking away all the emotions and in a way the mafia-style way of payoff that happens in performance review. So that's just one example. The other example is that there was recently an article of a man that went to the hospital, he didn't feel well. And the physician, whether he was tired or suffered from hubris, said, your stomach is fine, you should go back home. He didn't feel well, he talked to Grok, and Grok said, you have to get back to the ER and mention this to the doctor, to a CT scan, and it helped him. So we do have that ability of AI to take these executive decisions similar or even better than human. So what does that mean for us in the future? I think on the one hand, originality matters more than ever. Because if everybody has access to the tools that can automate, scale, and execute, then the difference is who comes up with the best idea, because execution is much better or much faster, and who asks the right questions. For years in Silicon Valley, the issue was that ideas are a dime a dozen and execution is key. But if now execution is becoming easier, then the idea becomes the center stage again. So the ability to ask the right questions and come up with a unique idea is actually what differentiates. And we see that in the organizations as well, because all these different functions that we have in organization, whether it's marketing or product and operations, these are synthetic functions that humans created just to make things simple for them. But if everybody works with AI, whether you're a developer and you're using Cursor, or you're marketing and you're creating content with Gemini, you always don't go as deep on that function as the AI does. So if everybody works the same, then the key differentiation is who's going to ask the right questions, and actually the rise of the generalist, the one that can understand technology, understand business and strategy, that's where the strength really lies. Now, the challenges of that, of course, and we'll see that since the launch of ChatGPT, is there's less job openings as there were before. But on the other hand, AI is also helping to create new type of technologies as well. So all these natural sciences, biology, chemistry, physics, both quantum and Newtonian, these are all also human construct. Nature doesn't work this way. Nature works on them in harmony at the same time. We split them up so as humans we could understand them as well. Now, what AI is trying to do, since it can go deeper in each of them much more, it's able to actually create new sciences, new ideas. And with new sciences, you can have new jobs, something that we cannot even understand today. So the ability to accelerate discovery through the AI is just off the roof and touches every single industry. And to many people, and to the point that I mentioned before, the next frontier for AI is actually to understanding more about the human brain, and that's the key topic over here. We need to get back to what gave us the inspiration to begin with, and many people believe that if we figure out the brain, we'll figure out everything else. But that leaves us in some sort of a paradox, because on the one hand, we have the potential of curing all diseases and creating this utopian sort of society. But on the other hand, there's all the challenges, and the AI can be abused by state actors or other actors and create a really dystopian reality. And humans cannot really take those two things at once because we don't like cognitive resonance. But for the time being, I think we'll continue to live with this paradox. So let's get back to the real world of today. What can we do now in order to adopt AI? I'm sure many of you heard this famous report from MIT that talks that most generative AI projects fail. And that throws a lot of cold water into the whole idea of AI. Now, the main reasons that they fail is, first of all, data readiness. The AI can't solve the problems that you have in the data. It can find patterns, but only if it makes sense and if it's ready. The organization and culture, there's a lot of executives that don't like that transparency that AI delivers. And obviously there's risk and concern, many of them valid, including also cost. I'll focus just on the data bit before we finalize. Everybody knows the topic of garbage in, garbage out when we deal with data. But if with AI's massive throughput, with so much garbage in and garbage out, we can get a wasteland. So you unleash AI into something that doesn't make sense or hasn't been created properly, then you're not going to get the value that you want. And I think that's where a lot of companies are now struggling. But luckily, we have Barcelona's very own Velorum as an example, a company that focuses on data readiness for AI. You need to understand the resources that you have in the business in order to understand how to unleash them. You need to understand the context, because context is becoming the king. And the context comes from the metadata and the relationship between the different data points that you have in the business. And that has gotten also the attention of Avishai from Wix. He mentioned, and they do a lot of AI over there, that prompt engineering is not going to help the AI be smarter. Fixing the data did. So AI can help us with a lot of stuff, but we can't go around the hard work of ensuring that our data is cleansed so we can actually utilize it. Now, it's not that data that eventually would determine the future. Data is key, but ultimately we need to get everything working in harmony. The people, the business, the culture, the organization, and the society of the whole. And I mentioned before a sandbox in terms of what we do over there, in terms of trying to find out new material, get quantum to work, and create something which is called large quantitative models. Math, the topic of math underlines the entire governing of the universe. So let's just look what LQMs actually mean. And this is similar to what they're doing with large world models. These are three different functions that are very quantitative heavy. Now, if we overlay large language model on them, we can see that it helps us with a lot of things. It can create stuff for us, it can summarize things for us. But if we compare it with large quantitative model territory, it's much more significant. It touches the basics of physics across each one of these industries to the core. Moreover, if we think about LLM on the left-hand side, it's mostly savings, cost cuttings, potential job loss as well. And we see that across customer service, image creation, video creation, and whatnot. Whereas we think about LQMs, we're talking potentially billions in new value. Drug discovery, creating new material, and unleashing AI on data, on quantitative, which is core to it. And that can't happen with our architecture, which is still based on statistics of words, which what LLMs really are. And that's why there are new frontier models, new large models at play. So to summarize this conversation, we talked about the path towards AGI and why are people heading to that path. I can tell you internally, most of the reasons, or the two main reasons that I hear from Silicon Valley of what's the obsession in terms of AGI, first of all, people want to live forever, especially the guys at the top. And the second thing is true curiosity. But that path is not going to be stopped, not with regulation and not with anything else. How it will end, it's going to be a discussion. But in terms of the approach of it, scale versus architecture, I think that debate would continue. I think we're seeing already today the difference between LLMs, whether it's Claude of Anthropic or ChatGPT, the difference between them is not going to be as significant. So we're starting to hit a ceiling. So we're looking for new proprietary data to improve it and create new models. That debate will continue, and that's what we're going to hear, not just LLMs, we're going to get LWMs, other mental models. And then we talk about abstraction, which is, I think, the key topic over here. I gave you the cloud example, but that cloud example can extrapolate to the entire technology layer, to the entire organization layer, and as a result, a lot of the economy. And that raises the question, what would the rest of us do? But I'd like to finalize with what can we do today? And I hope you get that from this conversation is data. We need to fix the data, understand the data that we have, and only through that, we can actually leverage the benefit that AI has to give us. And with that, I'm done. Thank you very much for listening.